Hi. I actually want to start by giving you a very warm welcome to the United States of America. I want to let you know that we care about you, that we've been thinking about you and your families since October 7th. You're not alone. I know that the media has portrayed a certain character of Israel and those who have suffered from the massacre in a way that is incredibly unfair. And on behalf of some of the Americans that have done that, I want to apologize and let you know that I do believe that the majority of Americans are behind you and condemn terrorism and do not think that innocent victims deserve what they've experienced. And when I have been spending time on social media, reading the type of horrific posts that have really attacked families that have been attacked and that are still mourning or still in a situation like yours, I'm heartbroken for you. And I really want to let you know that sometimes social media will portray things that are not the masses. Sometimes it's the loudest, but not really the majority. The majority of Americans do not condone terrorism. And all of us feel for you. And so you are welcome here. You really are welcome here. And I want to hear about the stories of your families and what you can report back from what you are seeing in Israel and what you're hearing is happening with these innocent civilians who've been taken captive. So why don't we just go and get into, just give me your name and just your background and why are you here in the U.S.? Who are you representing?
So my name is Itai. I represent the Mundur family, my uncle and aunt's family. This is Avram. He's my grandpa's younger brother. Uh, he has been living in Kibbutz Nir Oz for almost 60 years now with his wife, Ruti. And their family suffered the attack on October 7th. Their son, Roy, used to live in the kibbutz as well in a different house than theirs. And he was murdered on October 7th. On the same weekend, it was a Jewish holiday. It was Simchat Torah. So Karen, Ruti, and Avram's daughter came along with her son, Ohad, who is their only grandson. And the four of them found themselves in this horrible situation. And four of them were taken captive into Gaza by Hamas. Three of them were released last Friday. Ruti, Karen, and Ohad, which is very happy for us. But our happiness isn't complete because Avram is still there and we need him back. We need the grandfather of the family and my uncle. We need him back with his family so everyone can be reunited together. And this is why I'm here, advocating for his release and for all the men who are left behind because they deserve to be free too.
I'm Nama. I'm here with my sister Ophir, and we're here representing Itai, our cousin, which was kidnapped from his mother's house in Kibbutz Be'eri on October 7th. Both of his parents were murdered in the kibbutz. Our grandmother's caregiver was also murdered, a Filipino woman, not Jewish, not Israeli, just a young woman that moved to Israel in order to get a new life and support her family in the Philippines. And he's 38 years old. He's been there for 56 days now, thinking that his whole family was murdered in the attack.
Have you heard anything are there any signs of life? Is there any communication about the hostages that are still being held?
We've heard about Itai just a few days ago, which is a very happy thing, happy news, that he's alive, that he wasn't injured on the way. We didn't know that for more than 50 days. We didn't know if he even survived the attack or was he taken already injured or maybe dead. So we've heard that he's alive, but we also heard a very disturbing fact that his mental state is very, very, very bad.
What do you mean by that?
He witnesses his mother being murdered, and that's the last thing he saw before he was taken hostage. And we know that all the hostages that stayed with him were released, and he was left alone just a few days ago. We know that he assumes that his father was also murdered, which is what is true. But he also thinks that his brothers and our grandmother was murdered, which they survived. And in a message, he asked to send his sister that he's alive and asked her to do whatever we can to take him out of there.
Is what you know about his condition communicated to you through the hostages that have been released? How do you know these?
From the hostages that have been released in the past week, which stayed with him. Yeah.
So you know that they've been together. They've been held together.
We know they've been together and now he's left alone. Yes. All the hostages that were with him have been released.
I'm curious about how they were held. I mean, there's a lot of stories on the internet about how the hostages are being treated. There are videos where you see some of the children walking out of the cars and kind of waving and smiling. And there are actually a lot of those videos. And I'm wondering, what is your reaction to those videos? And specifically, when you're speaking to your family members who have been released, and Ty, your family's been released, how are they describing the conditions of being held hostage there?
Yeah, so first of all, as far as we know from what we heard in the videos, they were told by Hamas terrorists to wave, so it wasn't their willingness to wave by themselves. And actually, on the day that my family was released, it was the first day of the release, you can see that the turnover from Hamas to the Red Cross was nothing like that. You can see my family members terrified looks on their faces when they were taken. So you know for a fact that those who were waving weren't waving because they wanted to wave, but they were forced to. And as for the conditions, we know from what my family members told us that the conditions weren't good. They were provided very little food, with basic food such as rice or bread from time to time. And we know for a fact that they lost some weight. The kids came back with head lice. We know that they slept on the floor or chairs like these without any blankets. They didn't take any shower, obviously, for 7 or more weeks. And also, if they want to go to the bathroom, they had to wait for quite a while in order to do so, or use other methods to use the bathroom without actually going to the bathroom. Really difficult conditions. Thankfully, we know for it, at least my family, they haven't been tortured when they were there. They did suffer violence, obviously, on the day of the abduction on October 7th. But thankfully, there wasn't any violence during their time in captivity. And we know that they have been threatened and at gunpoint to not make a lot of noise and to stay quiet. And we know that they're moved from place to place. So they don't even know exactly where they were, under the ground, over the ground. And they weren't even shown at daylight, even if they were over the ground. So they were really kept away from the outdoors.
Were they kept in the tunnels, or were the hostages basically kept in the tunnels? I know they were kept also in that hospital for a while because they found evidence there.
So there are so many hostages. So all of them are kept in different places. So I know that my family, the 3 of them, first of all, we know for a fact they're separated from Avraham. We know that they weren't taken at the same time from the house in the kibbutz. So only, for example, when Ruti, Karen, and Ohad returned, they found out that Avraham is kidnapped. They thought he had been murdered on October 7th. But we know from other hostages that were released that they stayed with Avraham and the other family members stayed in a different place. So it was really small. From the testimonies we hear, they were all in small groups. So it's not like there's 200 hostages held together. It's very small groups in different places, moved from place to place. Sometimes they see other people, sometimes they don't. So this is what we know. We assume it was sometimes in tunnels, sometimes over the ground. We know that Avram, for example, is kept in tunnels from testimonies of hostages released. And Ruti, Keren, and Oad, they're not sure exactly where they were.
They don't have a sense of where they were caught. They were, constantly blinded, probably.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm curious about what you're hearing from some of the hostages that are being released about the conditions. Was there violence? I know that with the older hostages and with the children, they've been released sooner. They've been released, but the men are this category where anything can be done to them, apparently. Are you hearing anything about what's being done to hostages that are being held back?
So for us, we don't have a lot of information about the condition that he is being held in. He was held with people that were released, like women and kids. But we can't say where he was. Only just like Itai says, they have like really little food supply and no adequate toilet or restrooms. They don't shower. They don't have any shower, and they are also forced to whisper. This is all we know.
Can I ask you about the ceasefire? It's a pretty tough question. There is I don't know what you would call it, a moral dilemma that Israel is facing, which is every time hostages are negotiated for a release, Hamas is expecting the release of many terrorists that are murderers that have been held in prison, who will likely go ahead and commit murder again, and probably same crimes, maybe even worse, in addition to a ceasefire, which Hamas is not hiding. They're using it as a time to rearm and continue the attack on Israel. In return for that, Israel gets to bring innocent civilians home, your family members. It's a tough one. And I think many people are asking, what are your thoughts on this moral dilemma? You obviously have a close connection to these individuals and you want them home. And you also understand that it comes with the risk that you would be attacked again, and that when they grab people and hold them hostage, they get something that they want.
I think for us, as families of the hostages, it's not such a tough dilemma. We want our family back. We want our loved ones back. And I think the Israeli people, we're people that choose life. And we get such a big support and wide support from all Israelis to do whatever it needs in order to bring the hostages back. And the Israel government and military will find a way how to keep us safe after releasing those terrorists from prison back to Gaza or back to the West Bank. So I think that, it needs to do whatever it needs in order to bring Itai and Avram and all other 140 hostages that are still there. And we know now they're alive. We know about Itai that just a few days ago he was alive, but that's not ensured, not even an hour later. We don't know what happened an hour later, and we don't know what happened today and what's going to happen tomorrow. So we know that releasing those hostages and bringing them back alive, we don't have time for that. and it can't be postponed. But dealing with Hamas could be. And it should be the first priority to bring them all now while they're alive and before it would be too late, because we're running out of time.
It's the hostages that have been taken come from multiple different nationalities. I know there are more than a dozen Americans, also many different religions. I know that there are Muslims who have been taken captive. There are Christians who have been taken captive. I think it really says a lot about Israel that they're willing to do so much to save the lives of these innocent hostages, even at the grave cost of what it might do to Israel. And, Itai, I'm curious what your reaction is to that.
Again, we value life. We will do whatever it takes to save lives. And if we have the opportunity to bring hostages back alive, regardless of their religion, we will do that. And I think the support, not just of the families, but the support in the Israeli public is so great for that. And this is why it happened. And if we have the opportunity again to do it, to release all other hostages, we will do that, no matter what the price will be. We will find solutions on how to deal with terror. This is what we've been doing throughout our life, throughout Israel's existence. We've been dealing with terror. But now, if we have the opportunity to bring hostages back, we will release prisoners who are terrorists, even with the threat that they might hurt us in the future. But I think this says a lot about Israel and about the Israeli people. We value life. If we have the option to save lives, we will do that.
I'm not going to ask you how you're doing because I know you're doing pretty crappy. But I'd like to ask you a final question, and that is, what is your message to the world? There's a huge spotlight right now on Israel. There's attacks on Israel, and there is support and love for Israel. The world is watching. What do you have to say to the world? Any just final comments?
That people need to separate the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They need to separate it from the hostage situation, because this is a humanitarian crisis. This is not about Israel. It's not about Palestinian. It's not about that. It's about human rights. It's about living in a world that civilians cannot be taken out of their houses and being held in captivity for 2 months. This is a fight of the liberal world, because this is a war crime. And when I say we, I mean the whole world, will not draw a thick line when war crimes are being made. In what world will it be? And I come here today, and I came to LA, to the US, to ask people to support this fight, because whoever thinks of themselves as a human rights activist, or even just a believer, needs to support it. And if this will put a new standard for terror, because it will not end in Israel. This could have happened in New York. It could have happened in Berlin, in Paris, in LA, everywhere. And this terror and hate will spread around. And also, the things that have been happening ever since October 7th, it's a whole different war against hate. And it's not anti-Semitism, it's hate, because we already learned so much about the power of hate and the fact that it has no limits. it starts with anti-Semitism, but it goes around everywhere. And we learned it from the Holocaust and the Second World War. And it's happening again. And we need to notice this situation, to say, hey, we're not up for this. This is not something that is being accepted in the new world, in the liberal world, in the democratic world.
Nama, any final words? I look at you, young woman. And a little bit of a discussion about feminism and what it's like to defend women. I know there were women that were raped, kidnapped, and treated horribly. Any final words of inspiration and hope for a better world?
I think that talking about women, it's outrageous to see the response of all the so-called feminist organizations and so-called humanitarian organizations that actually are just uneducated. And, people have been denying the Holocaust through all the history. But this event occurred 2 months ago, and it was all streamed live by the terrorists of Hamas. They streamed it proudly, as if it's something to be proud of. And somehow the world has the face to deny as if it happened. People are sharing their trauma because they understand how important this is. And it's very easy, I understand, for young people that consider themselves like very progressive and liberal and cares about human rights to support so-called the weak side. But if they would understand and if they would learn what the weak side is, they would understand that the weak side is also the civilians in Gaza and also Israel against Hamas. And the civilians of Gaza are hostages and suffering from Hamas, just as Itai and Avram and all the other hostages are. They are suffering from a terror organization. Hamas is not a democratic party. It's not a government. It's not something they could be rely on. And they should search for the videos that people that managed to escape Gaza say, and the witness and the testimonies they give about living in Gaza under Hamas. Hamas is support, not support. Hamas is term, and that's something that people just don't understand. They don't understand this is a terror organization, and just as ISIS started in the Middle East and spread it all around in a very short time, Hamas carries the same ideology. It's not only against Israel, it's not only against Jews. It's against whoever is not Hamas, also Muslims that are not Hamas. They're against their own people that are not supporting Hamas. And as Phil said, it's in Israel today. Tomorrow it could be at LA, it could be in New York, it could be in Berlin, it could be in London, it could be in Paris. It could be in the most beautiful places on earth that could be destroyed just in a few hours, same as the southern part of Israel.
Well, I'll end with a few words, hopefully words of encouragement, and that is, I believe that Americans know good from evil, and that most of us believe that those who love God hate evil, which is why we are behind you and we'll continue to pray for you and for your families and for safety and peace, and may they all come home healthy. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.